Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am excited to present Simplify Professional Licensing for architecture, engineering, and construction firms today because so many firms across the United States face a fundamental issue: how to comply with the various licensing, business entity, and ownership requirements across the country. Perhaps your firm is facing difficulties maintaining and renewing licenses and managing qualifying engineers. Maybe you're looking to operate, hire, or employ people in other states, and perhaps you feel like you're reacting and responding, not leading your firms through these events. It is reaching even greater importance as new business opportunities arise, and firms need to be in good standing to pursue new business. We're here to tell you that you're not alone and to share our expertise in maintaining multi-state compliance. Before we get started, two brief housekeeping items. First, we have a relatively large number of attendees on the call today, so for that reason, the audience will be muted. Second, we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A following today's presentation, so feel free to log those questions in the chat below. My name is Billy Ditchy. I am the sales manager here at Harbor Compliance. I've been with the company almost 4 years now, and my experience spans AEC industry-specific licensing, as well as general corporate compliance topics for unregulated industries. I spend most of my time managing our team of sales reps and teaching AEC firms how to more effectively and efficiently manage multi-state regulatory requirements. On your screen, you'll see my contact information. I do encourage you to take this information down. And if you think of a question after the call, whether that's today, tomorrow, or in the future, please email me and I will work to get you a response. I will also show this slide at the end of the webinar so you can get that again later. And a little bit about Harbor Compliance. We are experts in architectural, engineering, and contractor licensing. Since 2012, we have helped over 40,000 clients simplify navigating regulatory requirements. In the AEC industry alone, we have helped over 8,700 AEC firms apply for, secure, and maintain licensing, business lifecycle, and tax requirements. Now, more about us later. For now, we have a lot to cover, so let's dive in. First, on today's agenda, we're going to discuss the benefits of compliance and why it should be a priority for your organization. Then we'll examine the top 5 licensing challenges specific to architecture, engineering, and construction firms. We'll also discuss the value of having a comprehensive compliance management solution, and one can allow firms to breeze through regulations, avoid potential issues, and mitigate risk. And then finally, we'll cover strategies for meeting regulatory requirements in each jurisdiction where your firm is operating. Professionals in the AEC industry understand the importance of maintaining up-to-date licenses and registrations. If you're an architecture or engineer, you've likely been managing your own licenses since you graduated college. So the AEC industry has an appreciation of how important licensing is. But have you considered the ways in which a well-run licensing and business compliance function can be an asset for your firm? Being able to secure new licenses quickly enables you to capture growth opportunities in other jurisdictions or disciplines. It ensures a firm can pursue new business, meet their timelines, and gain an edge over competitors that haven't been as proactive. A comprehensive compliance program provides confidence and peace of mind that your organization is fully compliant. It maintains your licenses without any lapses or gaps, reduces legal, financial, and operational risk safeguards for your firm's reputation, helping you stay in good standing, upholds professional standards of architects, engineers, and contractors. It also gives visibility and clarification of the compliance status for each registration and license for your organization. It operates efficiently and involves all compliance stakeholders, saving you time and money. And finally, it ensures continuity of compliance through business changes and staff turnover. A proactive approach means firms can take advantage of these benefits, and we'll talk today about how to create a program that enables you to achieve them. These are 5 licensing challenges AEC firms face. We'll cover each in depth in the coming slides, beginning with navigating the complex licensing requirements to secure professional licenses for both the individual professional and the firm. We'll discuss the importance of managing licensed qualifiers, other known as the qualifying engineers or responsible parties, and their continuing education requirements. Then we'll discuss how licensing becomes more complex as you expand into more states. There are considerations around the business entity's name, structure, and ownership, which are closely intertwined with licensing requirements, particularly the qualifying engineer in the new state. We'll discuss the requirements for licensing renewals, including the need to maintain good standing and how to stay abreast of regulatory changes. This is a high-level view of the first challenge we'll cover, which is managing the process of applying for professional licensure. There are, in fact, over 800 state and local licensing requirements across the US. Firms need a system to research and fully understand the varying requirements for each license type in each state and local jurisdiction. Each may have business and licensing regulations with certain prerequisites involving firm licenses, individual qualifier licenses, and entity registration. It's important to understand the order in which license applications and supporting documents must be submitted. Along with the license application itself, there is other documentation needed, like keeping up with continuing education, surety bonds, insurance requirements, and financial statements. As you can see to the right, there is a long list of documents to track and report to the licensing agencies, along with the application form and fees. Licensing authorities commonly require proof of Secretary of State and even Department of Revenue good standing during the initial and renewal application process. Many licensing jurisdictions stipulate that the business maintains internal records and follows certain governance or ownership requirements. These may or may not need to be reported on a license application. However, most licensing agencies have the authority to enforce and penalize governance violations. Firms need to fully understand the order of entity structure, naming, and ownership requirements before attempting to register or pursue licensure in a new state. Why? Because the order of operations between the state agencies varies. In some states, like New York, an engineering firm actually has to begin the process of licensure with the state education department before it registers the entity with the Department of State. But in others, like South Carolina, the entity registration happens before the firm applies for its license. And in most states, at least one individual, known as the qualifier, must first have their individual professional license. Which brings us to our second challenge, managing qualifiers. As you probably know, a qualifier is the licensed individual designated on your firm's license as being responsible for the firm's work in that state. In most states, at least one individual, known as the qualifier or responsible party, must first have their individual professional license before the firm can apply for their license. Without a license qualifier in most states, the firm's license application will be denied, and they will not be eligible to do business in that state. Managing qualifiers is critical for businesses, as the licensure of these individuals directly impacts the overall standing of the firm. For that reason, you might come across a synonymous term, the responsible party. Professional engineers and architects are the foundation of certificates of authorization. It is vital to maintain them and track their CEUs in order to protect your firm's stability, reputation, and the right to practice. 13 states have determined that an engineer in responsible charge must be a full-time employee of the firm, defined as 60% working hours in Virginia, 30 hours per week in Ohio and Tennessee, and a majority of working hours in North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin. Indicative of their importance is this quote from Illinois that the design firm will become inoperable for all professionals if the license of even one managing agent becomes inactive or not renewed. Since nearly every licensing board asks about legal action occurring in other states, the damage could spread across all your business and range from financial to reputational and everything in between. So let's discuss best practices for managing qualifiers, as the licensure of these individuals directly impacts the overall standing of the firm. In most states, without a license qualifier, the firm's initial license application will be denied. Also, any change in the qualifier's information or a change in the qualifier altogether must be reported within a short period of time, usually within 30 days, sometimes within as few as 10. Now, we know that changes in qualifiers can happen for innocuous reasons, such as an individual moving home address. They can also happen for more significant reasons, such as an individual departing the firm through retirement, resignation, or winning the lottery. Whether these changes are sudden or expected, firm management needs to be ready to update state licensing boards. If an existing qualifier leaves and no one holds the proper state license, someone is going to have to sit for the exam. And I could actually think of one recent client of ours that had this situation where the new qualifier had to fly to that state in question to take the exam in person in order to become licensed in time. And if the firm does not report the change, states can and do assess severe penalties for operating without a designated qualifier, up to denial of the firm's right to practice. This is why managing qualifiers is mission critical for the firm. Here's what you can do to meet this challenge proactively. Knowing which qualifiers will be designated for each business entity in each state. Many states issue licenses to specific areas of specialty, such as structural versus mechanical for engineers and residential versus commercial for contractors. Firms that practice in multiple areas across states need to know the licenses for each. When attempting to register in a new state, this means any qualifiers generally must be licensed in advance. Firms must be proactive. No one wants to miss a key opportunity because a qualifier was not licensed in time. Next, ask your team. Do you know who your firms or clients' qualifiers are currently? Which states and entities are they acting in that capacity? If that person leaves the firm tomorrow, who could fill the role within just a few weeks or even days? Answering those questions will identify any gaps you need to address. Lapsed licenses may incur penalties to reinstate, but it's better to tackle these types of issues head on. Once your licenses are in order, work to identify individuals who could step in as a replacement qualifier. Firms should work towards having a contingency plan, especially in key jurisdictions. And you must consider the state processing time. You'll recall that the licensure involves multiple agencies. Many licensing boards have only a handful of staff or meet on irregular basis, such as monthly. Expediting an application simply may not be possible regardless of who handles their submission. The state of New York, for example, can take upwards of 4 months to approve the formation of a design professional corporation, and that's assuming everything was submitted in exact accordance with the state's rigorous standards. As a result, management must take a significantly longer term view with respect to licensing. Compliance becomes integral to the firm's ability to pursue out of state opportunities, as well as to maintain the right to practice on an ongoing basis. It is simply not possible to react and attempt to pursue licensure in response to an opportunity. Most times, that opportunity will have passed. Finally, much like managing firm licenses, firms need to invest in a way to manage qualifiers and track their continuing education certification. An ideal solution includes software to track qualifier information across states, giving management immediate visibility into who is licensed where and producing an actionable list of tasks whenever a departure occurs or is imminent. Another challenge is when firms want to expand into other states and are required to register to do business in each state via foreign qualification. Today, many businesses are seeing the need to foreign qualify in one or more states. A highly relevant example that became more prevalent during the pandemic is needing to foreign qualify due to a remote work arrangement where an existing employee is now working from outside the company's domicile or physical office. There are plenty of other reasons why a business would need to expand, whether it's planning to submit proposals, opening a branch office, or simply having regular commercial activity or a physical presence of some kind. If you do want to look up a specific transaction in any state, I do encourage you to use the link on your screen to check out our foreign qualification ultimate guide. To foreign qualify in a new state, the business is faced with the prospect of ensuring its name is available for use, identifying a reliable registered agent in that state, and filling the appropriate forms with all the appropriate state agencies, Secretary of State, Department of Revenue, and licensing boards, all before beginning to transact business. There are variations to each state's requirements to register for foreign qualification. So it's important to research each state's requirements and understand the process and the order of operations between the state agencies when registering the business in another state. Overall, most states require at least one individual, known as the qualifier or responsible party, to have their individual license first and proof that the firm is in good standing in its current domicile. It must identify a reliable registered agent in that state and file appropriate forms, all before beginning to transact business. To submit the Certificate of Authority application, proof of good standing by the firm in its current domestic state is often required, and the COA approval is usually required for the licensing application to be reviewed and approved. Preparing the licensing application involves confirming availability and clearance of a legal name. For example, for ABC Engineering, it may require a letter from the licensing board showing that the word engineering can be used in the name. There are multiple agencies involved in the foreign qualification application and licensing processes. Typically, the licensing agency, such as the Board of Engineering or Architecture, will provide more specific information for firms than the Secretary of State will, especially regarding ownership structure and naming requirements. Multiple calls to each agency to verify information may be required, and this can create some logistical difficulty between identifying the need to register and the time it takes the state to approve the application. If you're not careful, there can be penalties for late registration, as well as potential delays in starting business transactions in the new state. You can see why dedicated research and preparation are needed before entering any state. Failure to do so will result in rejected licenses and business entity registrations, costly amendment fees, and delays in the ability to start working in a state. Now imagine going through this process across several states, and you can see how intricate multi-state registration can be. Businesses should examine their current and planned activities out of state and assess whether foreign qualification and additional registrations apply and work to secure them. So let's dive into the business naming and structure in more detail. When registering for foreign qualification, the business must ensure its name is available for use or a variation of it. You're probably familiar with certain professional entity types, which allow a given company to practice in a regulated profession. Examples include a professional corporation, professional association, or PLLC. Professional entities are registered and named at the state level, and the requirements also differ from state to state. Take, for example, a South Carolina engineering firm. In South Carolina, there is no professional limited liability company entity type. Thus, the engineering firm is organized as a traditional LLC. However, if that firm wishes to operate and obtain licensure in North Carolina, a traditional LLC won't be approved by the Secretary of State or licensing board because in North Carolina, they require that professional limited liability company, or the abbreviation PLLC, must be included in the name. This leaves the firm with two entities across two states to maintain, operating under two names as well. In addition, many states have distinct entity name requirements for AE firms. In most states, only companies that are authorized to practice architecture or engineering are able to use those and related terms in their legal names. For firms formed in states that don't require one of those words, they can expect to need an assumed name in that new foreign state that includes the term in order to comply. And the forced assumed name must be used in state on everything from tax accounts, firm licenses, and even contracts and invoices. For example, in Idaho and Alabama, the firm must have an engineer on staff and in good standing before they can use the word engineer in their name. And in a different twist on this requirement, we had a client who wasn't an engineering firm but wanted to use engineering in their name and was denied. Another naming challenge for business may come into play during a rebranding initiative too. The same process of checking availability applies before the new name can be recorded and used. And if the business registers in multiple states, this is a state-by-state exercise. Then there are the ownership requirements. States want the principals of AEC firms operating in their state to be licensed, hence qualified to run the practice. This is basic consumer protection, but states have varying ownership thresholds. Take our South Carolina engineering firm example. If it wishes to foreign qualify into New York State, it must demonstrate that 100% of the company's membership or shares are owned by professionals licensed in New York. For many firms, that is just not possible. Either select individuals aren't specifically licensed in New York, or they're not engineers at all because their home state doesn't mandate that. The only other option then for our South Carolina firm is to consider an entity called the Design Professional Corporation. For that entity, New York State sets the bar at 75.01% of owners needing to be licensed, along with a host of other considerations. Firms may quickly discover they need several entities, each with different ownership structures to comply in each state where they operate. How to name the structure and the ownership of a new entity will take time and sometimes a major consideration by management, and it is essential to understanding the process and getting the firm properly registered. While these requirements and hurdles have always existed, many AEC firms are facing broader exposure and rush to bid on new projects from the recent infrastructure bill and rebounding construction markets. It's imperative to be ready to clear regulatory hurdles in each state in order to win. As a result, management must take a significantly longer term view with respect to licensing. I also want to point out that firms should consult with their legal, tax, and accounting professionals. These parties are there to advise the business on the specific requirements, as well as on any tax or legal liability. Now let's turn our attention to another aspect of compliance tax registration. In the vast majority of states and for most tax accounts, actions by the business is required in the form of tax registration application. Whereas business entity registration takes place with the Secretary of State and licensing is handled by licensing boards, tax registration is a distinctly separate process and it takes place with the Department of Revenue. Businesses have the obligation of determining their tax liability and then registering to open tax accounts. Only in limited cases are tax accounts opened automatically, such as franchise tax in California or Texas. And then to the right, you'll see a list of common tax types a business may need to register for in a state. There may be multiple agencies are involved in tax registrations, each with its own process and applications. Firms need to plan ahead for lengthy processing times, 3 to 6 months or longer. And once registered, these accounts are then required to file returns and pay taxes. We have a lot to cover in today's presentation, so we'll avoid a deep examination of any specific registration application. However, for those of you who aren't familiar with the tax registration process, just know that these applications require highly detailed information on the company, its ownership, and planned taxable activity. We do have an example of this to share. Recently, my colleague spoke with the CEO of a fast-growing Maryland firm. They had an employee starting in the state of New York in a month. She thought that this was plenty of time, saying she would turn her attention to registration during the week that the employee started. Now, recall what we just discussed. In New York, foreign registration with a Department of State can take several weeks on its own. To set up the domestic design professional corporation can take months, coupled with the time it takes the Department of Taxation and Finance to process tax registration applications. You can conservatively add 3 weeks to another month. That means that the best time to get started without incurring any additional expedited fees would have been a minimum of 16 weeks before the employee's start date, if not several months. Any additional delay jeopardizes the firm's ability to onboard and pay that employee. Firms everywhere are running into the same issue, setting up in each state, from determining whether or not the entity has a nexus and even needs to register, to the process of filing and securing the various registrations and accounts across agencies takes time. With out-of-state registration, it's not practical to wait until you have an employee ready to start, and it's not efficient to repeat the scramble in each new state. Management, and especially HR and legal teams, need to be in lockstep, reviewing the hiring pipeline and ensuring registrations are in order as soon as it becomes feasible. As a result, just like the process of registering the entity, it's important to examine your firm's unique tax requirements upfront, understand the order of operations, and work proactively to secure the necessary accounts. Remember, because state requirements and your firm's specific nexus change, it's important to repeat this on a regular basis, and we recommend doing so in collaboration with a CPA or other tax or accounting professional. By doing all this, the firm monitors where state requirements potentially apply and can be ready to register when it becomes necessary. This is a summary of our best practices for researching, planning, and applying for expanding into new states and doing foreign qualification. And we believe this holistic approach is needed, which involves the first is conducting comprehensive research in the state before attempting to file anything. Second is understanding the order of operations. Third is consulting with legal, tax, and accounting professionals. Fourth is having an internal discussion and make decisions about entity name, structure, and ownership, which may need to take place first. Identifying qualifiers and responsible parties. Being aware of logistical difficulties that could result in delays and thus penalties. And then finally, managing the applications and filing fees across multiple agencies to their various deadlines. Now, we do have our first poll question of the day here, which I will put on your screen right here. We can get some answers from our attendees. Looks like most of the firms are saying yes here, that they are planning to expand into other states. So nice, like to see that. Next, let's discuss the need to maintain good standing in order to renew the firm's licenses. In every state in which you operate, your firm will now have ongoing obligations to maintain good standing, including any new foreign jurisdictions. You may be familiar with them already from managing the entity in your home state. Every state requires businesses to maintain a registered agent to receive service of process, lawsuits, and other government notices. The agent forwards the documents to the business, giving it and its counsel enough time to respond. It is often the first and only point of contact between government agencies, the courts, and the business or its legal counsel. So it's important to have an agent that can reliably receive documents at their physical location and forward them to you. Nearly every state requires entities to file an annual report to ensure it keeps current information on record. Because each state has a unique deadline, a multi-state business faces deadlines throughout the year. Reports can be due on a yearly or biennial basis. Most states also require the business to file and pay taxes to maintain corporate good standing, such as California, New York, and Texas. And there may be business lifecycle filings required as well, which vary by state. For example, registering a DBA, doing business as, and more. Overall, if the business misses even a single filing, it immediately faces consequences that start with late fees and increase all the way to administrative action and the denial of the right to do business in a state. Administrative action can generally be undone by a process called reinstatement, whereby the firm files articles of reinstatement and pays back all back taxes, filing fees, and penalties. This can be a costly and lengthy process, not to mention the reinstatement becomes part of the business's permanent record. Sometimes firms that have an entity that no longer operates in a state decides that they don't want to pay the fees or keep up the obligations associated with maintaining the entity, only to find an opportunity in that state a few months later. But now they've fallen out of good standing and have to play catch up. They pay reinstatement fees that far exceed the original filing costs, A much more cost-effective option might have been to simply withdraw the entity and re-foreign qualify, or simply just to maintain an agent and file the necessary annual reports to maintain the entity all along. In general, both maintaining the entity and closing the entity properly are less expensive and less risky than letting it lapse into noncompliance. Once licensed in a given jurisdiction, the firm will have license ID numbers, registration dates, and renewal deadlines, and continuously changing requirements to navigate. With over 1,500 AEC filings, keeping up with changes to requirements can be time consuming. And as the firm grows and becomes licensed in multiple jurisdictions or specialties, the complexity just increases. Along with the license application itself, there is other documentation needed, like keeping up with continuing education, surety bonds, and insurance requirements, and financial statements. Many of these were required with the initial license application, and they need to be maintained and reported to the licensing agencies. Licensing renewal applications usually require proof of good standing from the Secretary of State as well. Renewing licenses on time can take more effort than you expect, as many agencies require maintenance filings at any time that there is a change to the company name, ownership, contact information, or operating activity. As mentioned earlier, many licensing jurisdictions stipulate that the business maintains internal records and follows certain governance or ownership requirements. These may or may not need to be reported on a license renewal application, but most licensing agencies have the authority to enforce and penalize governance violations. Many firms expect their individual engineers to manage their own continuing education and their own license renewals. The firm loses a key level of oversight and faces increased risk by keeping individual license management at arm's length. As we'll touch on later, even a single lapse individual license from a qualifying engineer can have major consequences. So whether or not a firm has the administrative capability to directly handle these individual license renewals, it should invest in a solution that, at a minimum, gives management direct insight into the status of practitioners in any state and at any time. Relying on spreadsheets and other legacy systems with manual reminders runs the risk of a critical lapse, leading to direct financial penalties, but most importantly, a gap in the ability to operate and secure new business. You need to develop a system to manage all the aspects to maintain and renew multiple licenses. Here we have items to monitor changes to requirements. As I mentioned earlier, there are 800 plus AEC licenses, 1,500 plus AEC licensing filings, over 2,000 US filing authorities, 20,000 unique filings, and then 50 plus states for continuing education requirements. And best practices to include here are to conduct a review each and every year, incorporate new requirements into your licensing and compliance management system, and then finally, just to allow time to complete new applications and filings. And here is a summary of those best practices. First is securing new licenses. Review Secretary of State requirements alongside state licensing board requirements before beginning any filings. Managing qualifiers, setting up an automated system to track and report license statuses of all qualifying professionals, including continuing education certifications. Then we have expanding into new states, research administrative habits and preferences of state agencies in each new jurisdiction early in your planning, and allow time for the application review process. Next is maintaining renewals and good standing. Keep your records up to date with the board and set up an automated system of reminders of all license renewal dates. And then finally, monitoring changes to requirements. You should review licensing requirements in each jurisdiction on a regular basis and incorporate into licensing and your compliance system. Firms that now operate in multiple states may need to repeat these processes in every single state, wherever required. To address this, management should start thinking about ways to proactively manage complexity across jurisdictions. The only effective way to do this is with a planned system that lays out clear roles and processes to handle research, registration, and ongoing reporting. To facilitate, management should also consider outsourcing non-core components of the process to specialized providers. Relying on spreadsheets and other legacy systems with manual reminders runs the risk of a critical lapse, leading to direct financial penalties, but more importantly, a gap in the ability to operate and secure new business. Firms need to consider their business compliance and professional licensing management as a system to reduce the risk of items slipping through the cracks and firms falling out of good standing. The system needs to provide full visibility and encompass all licensing stakeholders and their activities, including the individual engineer's license and tracking their CEUs, the operations and administrative leads who manage the system day to day, to human resources handling the hiring and onboarding and often also tracking continuing education, the legal counsel and financial administrators coordinating on certificates of authority and other compliance needs, and even the marketing and business development teams who need to know, are we registered to do business in this state for any proposals under consideration? The best way or dream state to manage compliance starts with a proactive and comprehensive system for complying. It involves a top-down strategy as well as the right people, processes, and technology to execute. To address this, management should start thinking about ways to proactively manage complexity across jurisdictions. The only effective way to do this is with a planned system that lays out clear roles and processes to handle research, registration, and ongoing reporting. To facilitate, management should also consider outsourcing non-core components of the process to specialized providers. Now, on your screen are components of what a system might include, which we'll dive into here on the last segment of today's call. The first is establishing a system for business information records, tracking entity, tax and licensing data, managing corporate tax and licensing filings, maintaining registered agents, and then timely notifications for key staff. Second is command the renewals of firms and individual licenses, reliable research processes to track ongoing changes, up to date on the CE requirements, automated timelines and filing alerts, and then finally defining internal roles and processes for this. To be clear, every firm is unique. What we share here is general in nature and based on our extensive experience working with organizations of all sizes. But we encourage you to take these ideas back to your management teams and legal counsel in order to shape your overall compliance program. Now, Harbor Compliance offers a one-stop solution to many of these challenges you've heard presented today. We've taken these strategies and defined what constitutes an ideal system and built a suite of services and software around it. We've built cloud-based compliance software and continuously maintain a database of nationwide requirements. It keeps everyone within your organization up to date on your registration status in each state. It provides a secure, efficient, and effective way for your organization to maintain and access essential compliance information. And of course, organizations that register in multiple states and have multiple entities just gain additional value. Access to our software is available as part of our managed services or standalone as a SaaS. There are 4 purpose-built modules: License Manager, Entity Manager, Tax Manager, and Records Manager. So when we talk about needing a single place to manage registration data, records, and reporting deadlines, our software modules do just that. They provide your organization with valuable reporting insights needed to be easily assessed where your business is registered. We also provide the support services to manage the compliance system. We have a registered agent service here, annual reports, managed licensing, Secretary of State registrations, tax registrations, and managing DBAs, and many other corporate lifecycle filings as needed. We offer managed services by AEC compliance experts at the level of support you desire, from onboarding support to fully managed services. A current client of Harbor Compliance is an ENR Top 50 engineering firm. This firm provides integrated land development engineering and environmental consulting services for private developers, property owners, energy companies, and public sector clients, and employs over 1,400 professionals and has 33 regional offices. Traditionally, this firm used Microsoft Excel, SAP, GIS mapping, and PowerPoint to manage the business registration and professional licensing requirements across the United States. Now, as this firm grew, the sheer volume of work caused registration and licensing information to be overlooked, resulting in fire drills that needed immediate attention of a group of people and exposing the firm to risk of falling out of good standing. In 2017, their internal risk committee began searching for a better way to manage these important tasks. Rather than waiting to be prompted for a state registration renewal, they searched for a proactive management tool. At an ACEC conference, this firm actually discovered Harbor Compliance purpose-built compliance solution, and after careful investigation, they partnered with us. In one single solution, the firm they centralized and located and tracked business entity registrations, professional licenses, and renewals for every US state. Their comprehensive solution includes Harbor Compliance's Entity Manager and License Manager software, registered agent and annual report services, and a dedicated customer success manager to support all of their compliance needs. The licensing and business registration requirements for every state in which the firm operates are pulled into their dashboard with just a click. Renewal reminders for filings and annual reports are automated, ending the fire drills that took up so much valuable time for them. In addition, the firm can reference the continuing education requirements for each state and track individual CE certificates in the software. Their new compliance program has resulted in this. It's saving them time and money. A single POC oversees the day-to-day in less time, saving 50% versus past methods of complying. Peace of mind knowing that the reduced risk of compliance gaps or misrenewals, and then confidence to quickly pursue new proposals to win business. Business lifecycle requirements can change frequently, and once registered, the organization needs to maintain specific registration numbers and dates, filing deadlines, and copies of registrations, determinations, and licenses. Our Entity Manager software is an ideal solution for managing these essentials to remain in good standing. A proprietary requirements database gives you the current requirements across all U.S. agencies, saving you time researching for them. You easily have information at your fingertips that you can use prior to registering or renewing, and even during strategic changes to the business operations that trigger some type of change or maintenance filing. With our interactive map, you have immediate visibility of entity and compliance status in each state, including maintaining current registered agent information. Most multi-state organizations should consider hiring a nationwide registered agent service provider. In this way, they can rely on a single vendor for representation, resulting in consistency, reliability, and efficiency. Maintaining good standing with automated reminders for annual reports and required filings. Not only is registration data visible and in one place, but any events and tasks required to maintain standing, such as annual reports and license renewals, can be calendared, assigned, and actioned with automated reminders. Keep in mind, registered agent documents are time sensitive, so when your business receives a delivery, you don't want that to land on the wrong person's desk or inbox, both due to the nature of the document and the possible delay it causes. The system simplifies compliance management with all the data and records in one platform, and finally, it ensures continuity through staff and vendor changes. Very similar, our License Manager software saves you time, effort, with maintaining all your professional licensing in one platform. To begin, we provide up-to-date tracking of state and local requirements specifically for AEC firms in our Compliance Core database and License Manager. You can access the #1 nationwide licensing knowledge base in our compliance core database that tracks current statutory requirements for firms' licenses and individual licenses across all state agencies. Your licenses are dynamically linked to our compliance core, so the data in your portfolio is always current and reflects the ever-changing requirements. All your licensing information is centralized, managed in License Manager. It offers immediate visibility in a US map into your firm's licenses across the nation, giving the appropriate employees and management the instant visibility they need to do their job. For example, can the COO identify who the firm's qualifiers are? Can the Director of Business Development tell at a glance, can we do business here? Surely having this information at hand facilitates their ability to close a deal. You can also filter this map by business type or individual, which is especially helpful when needing to track responsible parties and qualifying individuals and your individual's professional licenses. It provides alerts for approaching licensing actions and deadlines, and it's easy to get what you need for with filtering capabilities. Now we do have our second poll question, which I'll populate here. And this second poll question is, how is your firm currently managing professional licenses? First one we have is spreadsheets. The second one is maybe an internal system that you created. Third is a third-party provider, and then that last one is an attorney. And by no surprise, it looks like spreadsheets is winning that poll, followed by an internal system that was created. Perfect. And that. Now you can easily sort to find the information you need. For example, you can sort by your qualifying engineer or architect and see their status in all the states that they are listed, or you can sort for renewal dates and license renewals tasks can be scheduled, assigned, and actioned. You can also clearly see upcoming due dates, and when you click on the Details tab of any license in this list, you can view the detailed state and local requirements of the license. You can track continuing education requirements and file your CE certificates. And lastly, centralized storage simplifies records management, including applications, filings, continuing education certificates, and the license certificates. Now, many of you may be concerned about the complexity of managing licensing and business entity requirements and the ongoing drain on staff time. Compliance registrations and renewals are key areas that can be handled with trained internal staff or outsourced, for example, to a service provider. Harbor Compliance offers a white glove, soup to nuts experience. We'll file on your behalf and maintain registrations and licenses for you. Remember, everyone plays a part, internally and externally, starting with management. The key is to be proactive and review all of your roles and processes regularly. We've talked through the various complexities involved in managing business compliance in a modern era, and we've discussed the importance of a robust compliance program that encompasses internal processes and which ties into the organization's growth strategy. Use the information you've learned here and communicate it to your management team. Take some time to self-assess, especially if you've been employing or hiring, selling, or operating across state lines. Gaps may emerge that simply can't be met using existing processes and resources. As businesses evolve faster and faster, it's increasingly important to be aligned with a vendor who can support your ever-changing needs across the enterprise. In closing, Harbor Compliance offers software and managed licensing, business lifecycle, and tax registration services across the United States. We are also a nationwide provider for registered agent service with local offices in all 50 states, including DC and Puerto Rico. We offer support on a comprehensive basis as you require, whether your firm needs assistance in managing licenses to book new business or to register or maintain entities, open tax accounts, or apply for business licenses. Our dedicated account services team will support you in any way you need. At this point, we want to thank you for joining us today and offer you a free Harbor Compliance Score, where we will actually verify your compliance status for the various business entities you have set up nationwide. If you're interested in getting this free Harbor Compliance Score, just please let us know in the chat box and we will reach out to you after this presentation. Looks like we do have about 10 minutes remaining. I do see we have a couple of questions already in the chat box, so please feel free to ask those right now. Looks like the first question here is for states that require 2/3 ownership to be professional engineers, are there options for registering in a state as a professional design firm or for a corporation with owners who are not PEs? That's a great question. Because of the requirements, let's take that offline. It's probably a longer answer than we probably have time for today, but let's definitely take that offline and maybe set up a meeting to discuss that one. Second question we have here is, does Harbor Compliance, can Harbor Compliance actually assist in acquiring new licenses? That's correct, yes, we can. We could do everything from really start to finish. We can complete the Secretary of State registrations for your firm, and we could also acquire those engineering firm licenses, which is a really nice benefit of centralizing that registered agent service with us instead of having multiple companies handle multiple different items regarding your compliance situation. If you wanted us to handle everything for you, it's just simply telling that direct point of contact you have here at Harbor Compliance, hey, we're ready to go into this state, please acquire everything for us, and then we could do everything start to finish, especially for those certain states that require that Secretary of State registration to happen first. Really good question there too. Any other questions from our attendees? Looks like we had 2 so far. Give it a couple of seconds here. All right. And as I mentioned earlier, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. That is my email address on the screen. If you think of anything following today's presentation, you can call me, email me. We could set up a meeting to discuss any other questions that you may have. We could also set up a demo of our software suite and talk about your current compliance situation. Looks like we had one more question. You only work in the US, not Canada. We do provide the Secretary of State registrations only in the domestic US. With our license manager software, we do have Canadian licenses on there for reference data. So if you do have work in Canada, we do provide that within our license manager software. However, we don't offer a managed option in Canada right now. Good question. All righty. Well, I appreciate the questions. That will conclude today's presentation. I appreciate everyone's time today.